Welcome to In the Spotlight. I'm Abigail Pogrebin. Rabbi Jeffrey Salkin is the co-founder of Wisdom Without Walls, an online salon for Jewish ideas. It's a new venture that engages Jews in conversation with significant Jewish thinkers about American Judaism post-October 7th. And you can find Rabbi Salkin's new venture at wisdomwithoutwalls.org. His column, Martini Judaism for Those Who Want to Be Shaken and Stirred, published by the Religion News Service, won a Wilbur Award from the Religion Communicators Council in 2022 for the best religion column of the year, as well as two previous awards. Martini Judaism also appears as a podcast, if you want to look it up, on Audible or Spotify. Jeffrey's essays have appeared in the Washington Post, Commentary, the Wall Street Journal, Tablet, and the Forward, and JTA. He has discussed the American political scene on CNN and the BBC, and he delivered the keynote on religion and spirituality at the world-famous Chautauqua Institution. Rabbi Salkin lives in South Florida, and he devotes his time to writing, teaching, and consuming vast quantities of coffee. His new book, which we're going to talk about today, is called Tikkun Ha'am, Repairing Our People, Israel and the Crisis of Liberal Judaism. Welcome, Rabbi Salkin, to the broadcast. It's good to be with you.
It's great to be with you as well, Abby.
So this book, Tikkun Ha'am, Repairing Our People, Israel and the Crisis of Liberal Judaism. You wrote this before October 7th, and then you added a chapter, a very powerful one. Before we get to that edition, tell me why you chose to write this book now.
To me, it was very clear that there were aspects of liberal Judaism in America that needed repairing. I believe that we have fallen into a trap of subscribing to a culture of individualism, of consumerism, of a worship of technology, and a culture of therapy. And I believe that what liberal Judaism has to do within its own ideological frameworks is to reclaim a sense of community, a sense of obligation, a sense of mitzvah, and even bigger than that, Abby, a sense of being a counterculture, of being able to go against the grain of so much of what America is saying today.
And when you talk about liberal Judaism, who are you talking about? Because some have a denominational kind of organization in their heads when you say that.
Well, I'm talking about Reform Conservative, Reconstructionist, New Age, Renewal. And by the way, I think it's possible to say that even certain aspects of modern Orthodoxy would fall into that general category. But in general, I'm looking at Reform Conservative, Reconstructionist. And as a Reform rabbi, you won't be surprised to know that much of my focus and much of my concern is on the current state of Reform Judaism in America.
And where do you think this went wrong? We went wrong. Like, how did this consumerism, individualism, obviously it's been gradual, but do you have kind of signposts for when we really got ourselves in trouble?
That's a really great question. I think it's possible to say that in its earliest renditions, Reform Judaism, even classical Reform Judaism, though I might not have agreed with every single principle it adhered to, it was a serious Judaism. I think Reform Judaism is still a serious Judaism. But I think after World War II, I think after the 60s, certainly after the 70s, we lost the ability to fight a cultural battle. And I think we just assimilated, not into being non-Jews, we just assimilated large pieces of the generalized American culture. There's a man named Leander Keck who just recently died. So I say this in his memory. He was professor of New Testament at Yale Divinity School. I had coffee with him once, and he said, I've always admired the Jews for their ability to go against the grain and not to become part of the generalized American culture. I just feel that we shouldn't be letting him down.
So we should celebrate difference or double down on difference. It's not about blending in or Americanizing ourselves. The difference is the point.
Exactly right. Difference is good. We are very comfortable in speaking truth to power. The Reform movement in particular has done a wonderful job of that through our social justice programs. We just don't speak enough truth to culture. And there's not enough pushback. I think rabbis could be doing more and could be saying more about this. And I think people are hungry for that message.
truth to culture, speaking truth to culture. Can you tease that out a little bit more? Whose culture? What's culture?
I'll give you a great example. I'm a big fan of popular culture. And in fact, in the book, there are several chapters about the Jewish influences in popular culture on Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, Paul Simon, Steven Spielberg, etc. But for example, I have a chapter in there asking whether it's okay for Jews to watch the Super Bowl game, noting that football is a very dangerous sport in which there are head injuries that are in many ways disfiguring and crippling. I go back to the Talmud and I ask the question, was it okay for Jews to go to gladiator games? And I bring in that debate. I think it's important for us to stand apart. And here's the issue. The Orthodox and the Haredim, they do a great job of standing apart. Can we speak our own truth without living in ghettos of the mind or ghettos that are even built in geographical terms? I think we can.
You have a quote in the book, I have invented a parlor game for today's Reformed Jews. Tell me why you are a Reformed Jew, but you're not allowed to use any negative words in your answer. Don't tell me what Reformed Judaism isn't, what it says you don't have to do, or what it says you don't have to believe. A negative Judaism is a thin gruel upon which to feast. A negative Judaism creates negative Jews. We need a positive Judaism that will create positive Jews. Tell me a little bit more about what it means to be a positive Jew.
Well, I came to this conclusion about Reform Judaism because, as you've said, I discovered that people were defining Reform Judaism by what they didn't do. I don't wear a kippah, I don't keep kosher, or even worse, we're very Reformed in my family. We were never members of a synagogue. They use Reform Judaism and that vulgar Reformed version of our name as a way of describing non-observance, non-affiliation, non-connection. Now, for me, my Reform Judaism—
First of all, Jeff, don't you think most people who make that mistake actually don't know that they're supposed to say reform and not reformed? Don't you think that was actually just a moment of ignorance there?
It could be. And therefore, we need to do, I think, probably a better job of just saying who we are. But Abby, we've been around for 150 years here. You know, we should have gotten the label out there a long time ago. I think there's something in our perception and the way that we're perceived that needs to be transformed, even in popular culture. Now, for me, Reform Judaism, I'm a Reform rabbi. I state my Reform Jewish connections as basically saying this: I'm a Reform Jew because I believe in educated choice about the mitzvot, and I'm a Reform Jew because I believe that we have created the most successful negotiation with modernity in the last 150 years. And then I hand out the T-shirt so that people can wear it as well.
What does the T-shirt say?
Reform Judaism, making informed choices since 1825, or something like that. And maybe it should be in German.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a bestseller, but I like it.
I'm not even sure, by the way, that these denominational labels, Abby, are going to work very well going into the next couple of decades. You know, I know a lot of people, a lot of young people who grew up in Reform synagogues who are members of conservative synagogues, not because they love the service, sometimes they do, but they like the rabbi, they like the community, they like the vibe. So I get the feeling that we're moving towards, and I would encourage this, a generic non-orthodoxy in America. I would love to see the Reform Seminary and the Conservative Seminary doing much more together. I actually predict, this is probably going to get you some letters and postcards, that it's just not financially going to be viable in the next 20 years for us to have two separate institutions training rabbis for the same group of people. That's what I think.
Well, I want to talk to you about the seminaries because you address the crisis in essentially enrollment in these seminaries. Part of it's the cost, part of it is that they can go elsewhere to become clergy or become Jewish spiritual leaders. That same pipeline is changing, is evolving. And I know that there's a lot of hand-wringing about just the financial robustness and future of these institutions that many of us have really relied on and still rely on. Can you just diagnose what happened? Did this become a career? I know you are a rabbi, but to be a rabbi, to be a cantor, has the appeal changed or has just the path?
I think there's a smoking pistol here that I allude to in the book. When you look at the Pew study, and if you look at the diminishing levels of Jewish identity and Jewish observance among people in their 20s, which is still the applicant pool for most rabbinical schools, even though anecdotally, I've heard that there are many people who are entering the rabbinate now as second or third career options. But if you look at the shape of Jewish identity among college students and people who are graduating from college, the growing secularism and the diminishing of ties to the Jewish people, we got what we paid for. This is exactly what's happened. The chickens came home to roost. I have a lot of concerns about this. So, for example, after October 7th, how many rabbis got phone calls or texts from parents in their synagogue saying, my kid is at Harvard, my kid's at Yale, he's being called an apartheid colonialist? How does she answer? How does he answer? And there are many rabbis who are saying to themselves, who told your kid to drop out of religious school at puberty? In other words, kids are leaving Jewish education at precisely the time when we could be teaching them to deal with the big issues of life. It's frustrating. I don't know what to do about this.
But what about that idea of having failed our kids in the sense that you talk about how their Jewish education, really the majority, I don't want to oversimplify it. I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but the majority stop their Jewish learning after bar and bat mitzvah, which is pretty young to stop your Jewish education. And then they often sort of wake back up to it once they're either under the chuppah or holding their son getting a bris. So in that gap, where do you think we, and I'll even speak for myself, although I hope my kids have a little bit more than that, but I didn't prioritize it in the same way, other than confirmation. What do you think you would prescribe now, rather than say sort of being self-flagellating? What would be a better blueprint for, let's not say Reform Jews, non-Orthodox Jewish families?
Well, Abby, before you flagellate yourself, other than confirmation, Dayenu, it's great. Your kids had a Jewish education at least through 10th grade. Where'd we go wrong? I'm going to give a shout out to my colleagues, rabbis, cantors, and educators. We work really hard. We engaged kids as much as we could. We had the best kind of product, the best kind of curricula. We did it. We really worked hard. Kol hakavod. I'm just saying thank you to all my colleagues. Where do we drop the ball? I have to say this. I'm a parent. You're a parent. A lot of parents just lost the energy. They just said the secular world presents us with so many things that we now have to be concerned with. Look, when I was a kid, I'm older than you are. When I was a kid, we didn't have much going on. I had plays after school. If I was having trouble with a subject, I stayed after school for extra help. I had a paper route. I had plenty of time to be involved in Jewish youth stuff and Jewish educational stuff, and it paid off. The world got too heavy for us, and I don't want to start blaming people. It's the whole system just needs invigoration, and I think that, by the way, foundations should be putting money into this. Serious money.
I want you to talk about Jews as a tribe. It seems like you're basically suggesting we bring that concept back, or at least we don't run from it, as some do. And you wrote, to be part of a tribe is to feel responsible for your traditions. To be a tribe is to feel responsible for the other members of your tribe and to feel connected to those members. So I think particularly after October 7th, we're seeing a more tribal moment. Can you just address why you do think that's a positive?
I think it's very positive because I teach the idea that we are a small people, but we are a very large family. And let me tell you, Abby, let me not get choked up here. October 7th proved that. It just proved that. These are all our children, all of our cousins. This proved it. Now, here's the thing. On the one hand, we have people who say that Judaism is just a religion. That was classical Reform Judaism. And then we have people who say it's just an ethnicity. That's just kind of a secular Judaism. I want these two things to be married together, a religious sense that we are part of a large family, and that is called a tribe, in the same way that it's okay for American Indians or Native Americans to feel a sense of tribal responsibility. Now, I don't mean tribalistic, by which I mean chauvinistic and ethnocentric and using disgusting words that I would never repeat on air to refer to people who are Gentiles or whatever. No, I mean that We're a family. I'm going to tell you a story. You know, there was a Palestinian prisoner who was in an Israeli prison. And it was Passover, and he saw his prison guard eating a sandwich on bread. And he said to him, "Isn't it your holiday of Pesach?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Aren't you supposed to be not eating bread or leavened food on this holiday?" And the guard said, "I feel no responsibility for those ancient traditions." And the Palestinian prisoner said, "We're going to win." And he said, "Why?" He said, "If a people has no respect for its traditions, then it will become weakened and it will lose. It will win." That's powerful stuff.
You have criticized some progressive organizations in the Jewish world in response to October 7th. What was your criticism, and does it still hold even now that we're speaking 3 months later?
Yes, the response was crickets. They either said nothing to reach out to us, or in many cases were extremely critical of Israel's response, using language that is inappropriate and harsh. I feel very bad about this. I will not pollute this show by talking about the horrific things that happened on October 7th, what can only be called gynocide, the violent crimes against women, against which most international women's organizations and the United Nations remained mute for far too long. They hurt us. You know, I have to say to you, Joe Lelyveld died recently, the former editor of the New York Times, right? Joe Lelyveld's father, let me just back up a little bit. Joe Lelyveld's father was Arthur Lelyveld, rabbi in Cleveland. My oldest religious school memory, Abby, was of the religious school teacher holding up the front page of the New York Times with Arthur Lelyveld's picture on it. Arthur Lelyveld had his head split open on a civil rights march in Mississippi in 1964. We shed our blood. And what do we get? You know, there's a Hasidic story in which a rabbi asks his disciple, "Do you love me?" And the disciple says, "Of course I love you." And the rabbi says, "Well, do you know what causes me pain?" He said, "How can I know what causes you pain?" He said, "If you don't know what causes me pain, how can you say that you love me?" Now, I'm not saying that we should be walking away from these causes, but at the very least, I think we have to sit down with our progressive partners and say, can we talk about what happened? It can't be business as usual. We care about these issues too much to escape from them, but we need some empathy on your part as well.
You write, it is now clear to me that October 7th was a Control-Alt-Delete for the Jewish soul. And we must now contemplate the possibility of a post-October 7th non-Orthodox American Judaism. What is that post-October 7th Judaism?
Well, it's a sad and poignant question, because on October 8th, I woke up and realized that the book I had written was inadequate in addressing that. And I sat down and in one day wrote a new introduction, which you've alluded to. First of all, as we've already said, I think a post-October 7th American Judaism will be more tribal, more concerned about the Jewish people, will not become tribalistic, but will be addressing the balance between, if I am only for myself, who am I? If I'm not for myself, right? That sort of thing, the whole particularism, universalism thing. Number two, as I've already said, I think we're going to be reassessing many of our political alliances. I don't think we're going to walk away, but we need to talk about it. Number three, I do think that many American Jews, and I say this with mixed feelings, are reassessing the role of the university in American life. What happened was that there was a moral relativism, a cultural relativism, it depends on the context-ism, that shocked American Jews. Now, I'm writing this week the following words, that it would be wrong for American Jews to walk away from the university as an institution and to pander to the anti-intellectualism that's happening in American life. But many American Jews are now asking, what is up with the universities? And even more than that, what is up with rational thinking itself? And finally, I am hoping, as I said earlier, that this will call every American Jewish leader and educator for a reboot of what Jewish teen education needs to be, because our young people don't need a catechism. They don't need hasbara. They don't need talking points, but they really need to feel the Velcro. And we have to send them to college with that Velcro. Here's the good news. I think more American Jewish college kids are feeling that connection than they ever would have thought possible.
And you say that about American Jews generally. You say, more than ever before, American Jews appreciate the centrality of Israel and Zionism to the Jewish people. I have seen Jews previously lukewarm or even apathetic about Israel become full-blown Jewish patriots.
Absolutely.
I've seen it too.
Well, let me give you 2 data points. Number one, I find it really interesting that there's been an increase, at least on Facebook, at least Facebook people I hang out with people who are doing 23andMe and Ancestry.com, and all of a sudden they're saying, oh my God, I just discovered I'm 10% Ashkenazic Jewish, and they want to learn more about their heritage. There are anecdotal reports that I recently reported on that say that there has been an uptick in the number of Gentiles, non-Jews, who are interested in exploring Judaism and wanting to become part of the Jewish people after October 7th. Something has happened. And I'm not surprised. Look, I'm old enough to remember this. Abby, you clearly are not. After the Six-Day War.
Stop the age already. We're pretty close in age.
Yeah, but okay.
It's all right. I'm going to take it. I'm younger than you. I'm taking it.
All right. But do you remember the aftermath of Six-Day War, 1967?
Okay, no.
No. Okay, I do. It was my bar mitzvah year. I just aged myself. Ready? After the Six-Day War, what happened? Jewish education got better. Jewish informal education got better. Hillel foundations were funded better. There was an explosion of American Jewish culture and literature and music and summer camp, and Jewish studies programs on the college campus grew. All of this because of 67. It is possible that we are in a replay of the post-1967 moment in American Judaism, now in bold print. But the denominations must manage it correctly and inspire their people adequately.
You started something called Wisdom Without Walls, mentioned it in the introduction, an online salon for Jewish ideas. Tell us about it and how people can find it, and what's the concept here that differs from anything else?
This is a crazy thing. 2 weeks ago, Sandra Lilienthal, who's an award-winning Jewish educator, and Rabbi Ed Feinstein, who's the Rabbi Emeritus of Valley Beth Shalom in Encino, California.
He's wonderful.
He's one of my favorite people. We sat down and we said, there is a hunger among American Jews post-October 7th to connect and to learn Judaism. And so what we did was we created wisdomwithoutwalls.org. That's how you'll find us, wisdomwithoutwalls.org. And we invited Rabbi Sharon Brous. We invited Amichai Lau-Levi, who's a rabbi. We invited Rabbi Yitz Greenberg. We've got Shai Held. We have Rachel Korazin. We have Daniel Hartman.
Amazing lineup.
All of these people are lining up to teach for us. It's going to be online once or twice a month. You can register. You can get a membership. We're encouraging congregations, large, small, whatever, to be our partners. You couldn't afford, you couldn't afford to bring these people to your synagogue. And for a new low price, you get to have them right on your screen. Wisdom Without Walls.
And what do they do? Do they lecture, or are they interviewed? What's the format?
They present, they teach. We're not even calling these classes. We're calling these conversations at wisdomwithoutwalls.org. In other words, you get to be part of, imagine an interactive podcast. And you've got the greatest Jewish minds of all time. And if any of your listeners are interested in presenting, shoot us a proposal.
Right. There's got to be some filter, Jeff. There's got to be some filter.
We do quality control.
We do quality control. I want to end by the way you end your acknowledgments. It's with a verse from Psalm 118. It moved me very much, but I want to ask you why you chose it. And the quote is, "I shall not die but live and proclaim the words of the Lord." Why that?
You know, I'm getting nostalgic. When I served as the rabbi of Central Synagogue of Nassau County in Rockville Center in New York on Long Island, the other Central Synagogue, that verse was on our bima. That's a very unusual verse. And I once talked about amputated biblical verses. I shall not die but live is about Jewish survival. But the second part, and to be part of the narrative of God, is about religious creativity. Those two things must be wed together. It's not enough for Jews to merely survive or to thrive. We need to do so creatively. We can't be like Old Man River, afraid of living and scared of dying. We're in a moment right now where the world is looking at us and they're saying, can we engage in Tikkun Ha'am? Can we repair our people? We've done a really good job of Tikkun Olam. This is a deliberate rhyme of repairing the world. Can we repair our people and the broken hearts of our people? I had no idea how relevant this book was going to be on October 6th. By October 8th, I knew that it was a clarion call, a shofar blast. And I thank you for your time and your friendship. And I really encourage your viewers to engage in the ideas and to be part of a very exciting national conversation. This horror of October 7th is going to be with us for many, many years. But the joy of Jewish study and engagement will outlast those tears.
Thank you, Rabbi Jeffrey Salkin, and thank you for this book. The name, again, for all of our viewers is Tikkun Ha'am, Repairing Our People, Israel and the Crisis of Liberal Judaism. Jeffrey, it's always good to be with you. And for everyone who watches in the spotlight, I'm grateful to you personally. I'll see you next time. I'm Abigail Pogrebin.